This weekend can perhaps be best described as Kasai's time to shine. An already good hero and perhaps the best warrior that we've ever gotten got that much better with the exiting of both Victor and Prism from the format. And yet, interestingly enough, she didn't pick up Living Legend points along the way. So let's talk about Kasai's weekend along with some of the other heroes that made notable impacts to the Classic Constructed and Blitz metagames. We'll start here at the Calling Shinjuku. As you can see down that first column, Kasai does gobble up about 5% of that meta share, with 15 players choosing to play the deck, and some notable players on that deck indeed. But you can also see that there are a lot of other decks at play. This is a very even gradation down the list, with Syndra and Acilio taking the top 2 spots in meta share with 32 and 31 players respectively. Arachne Marionette following very closely behind. That's the day 1 metagame, but as we look at the conversion into day number 2, that's where things get a little interesting, because you can see Kasai did a fantastic job of converting. From 15 players, 8 of those players make their way into the top 67 into day 2, and the deck represented very well on camera. If you have not watched any of the day 1 or day 2 coverage, it was very well done, of course, as always, but it was also a Kasai festival, because it was Kasai all over the place, including Shoma Yamamura playing his version of the deck, which has become a quite popular version to run and play. But this wasn't just Kasai featured, because if we cut all the way over to the top 8, you can see that along with 3 Kasais all sort of paired around each other there at the bottom, there were also 2 Arachne Marionettes. And as we saw, if you watched this top 8, and if you didn't, spoilers incoming, this is the time to click away. But as we saw, it ended up being Kasai making it all the way through the bracket into the finals versus Jacob Clements on Arachne Marionette. Then this turn happened.
A wealth of copper for Hiratsugu now, 9 pieces at his behest. Can he survive what Jacob Clements is putting out, though? Savor Bloodshed, up 6 and run. Kiss of Death equals an attack for 11. He's just got to survive. That blood on our hands for 6 copper is gonna be huge if he can just resolve it. He's got to survive. That's the important bit here. And it does seem to be 1, 2, 3 plus 3, 6 on 11. Reactions are Stains of the Red back. The one way that Jacob would have been able to give this Kiss of Death go again.
18 damage represented here from this Kiss of Death, and 1 more on hit to boot.
Jacob Clements looking like a flesh and blood magician at this point. 6 meets 18. 12 damage gets through, a total of 13 cleaved away from the 19 remaining. And now the draw from Jacob Clements off of Savor Bloodshed. Scar Tissue, which can be sunk directly into this Graphene Callisra. No! It is lethal! There's no defense reaction. The flick of the Kiss of Death buys the game. It was north of 20 life at the beginning of that turn. 19 life, and it just vanished. Oh my goodness!
Honestly, that is a painful way to go, and sometimes Arachne just does exactly that. That hand was eventually a 6-card play, and it netted far more than the 19 damage necessary, even through blocks, to get there in the end. So Jacob Clements ends up taking it down on Arachne Marionette, and Kasai's maybe perhaps victory lap, if you want to call it that, with her being so close to hitting Living Legend, is spoiled that little bit more. So the question then becomes, where is Kasai's true place going into this next Pro Tour weekend? Does she have a spot in this metagame? Well, here's the Fablazing data, if you will, from that exact event. So across all of the recorded matches, Kasai does indeed carry the highest overall win percentage across the board. So, I mean, that does answer the question. Even though she did not win, she put 3 copies into the top 8, and she came very close to picking up that win with just an absolutely explosive end to that tournament run, off of the back of Arachne Marionette doing assassin things, just playing a lot of 0 for 4s, 0 for 5s, card draw, and attack reactions, which kind of seems like what a warrior would want to do. But nope, instead, that is exactly what Arachne Marionette gets to do. That being said, Arachne Marionette did not have nearly as high of a win percentage across all recorded games, but we also had some really interesting outliers. If you look, Valda doing particularly well, even though there were only 59 matches recorded. Fang had some interesting results because some of these Fangs, at least one of them shown on stream, was Decimator Great Axe Fang. And Arachne Huntsman is one I want to point out alongside of Betsy Skin of the Game. We did see Betsy on stream multiple times, but Arachne Huntsman, not Marionette, being a very successful fatigue deck on the weekend, because this was not the only place that Arachne Marionette was finding results, as over on the Grave Troll Games Battlegrounds stream, you can see Arachne Marionette was successfully able to fully fatigue Acilio Constella Intelligence and pick up the win. This was pretty exciting. I'll move my face just so that you can see the Grave Troll Games logo. Shout out to Grave Troll Games for streaming this, and you can watch the entire thing back. It was a good time. I watched a good portion of this alongside of some of the other streams that were going on. But Arachne Huntsman ends up picking up the win, fatiguing to the finish line and getting some much needed and well-deserved living legend points. But not to be outdone and getting their own just desserts, we saw Acilio Constella Intelligence come across the finish line over at the King Kong Comics and Games Battleground, pushing enough damage here at the end to win in the finals and take some living legend points and the Battlegrounds win. So it wasn't all Kasai this weekend. We had ourselves a nice spread of multiple heroes with notable finishes across the classic constructed format. Because as we dive into the Silver Age format and look at the accompanying showdown for the Calling Shinjuku, we see a lot of different heroes and some really interesting development. On this screen, you don't see a single copy of Oldham or even really a super defensive Guardian. We have instead Bravo Flattering Showman as the only Guardian represented on this page, and one hero sort of masquerading as a Guardian. That would be Olympia, and we can of course expect this to be the Decimator Great Axe variant, with the new pump up of all of the copies of Steelblade Shunt that you can play. This deck is back on the menu. But alongside of it, we of course had Florian, which is a deck that really did fall off and kind of just disappear from the metagame more recently. Florian was up against a Snapshot Lexi on the other side of the bracket there. You can see this one did have in their deck list some consideration for the Redline decks and did play things like Arctic Incarceration and other Frostbite generators, which I really like to see because that I do think is an answer towards heroes such as Briar, of which there were two, putting Tam one of them, having to face down the lone Blaze Firemind that made their way into the top 8. Blaze has a arguably good matchup depending on how things shake out into Briar, perhaps the most 50-50 you can argue. And then on the other side, you see Briar faced down that DGA Olympia, and Bravo had to take on Dromai, and that one is an interesting consideration of a matchup. It's a little bit of a head scratcher. It really just depends on how many poppers Bravo presents, because if that deck has the 30+ popper count, then Dromai is feeling very sad and probably going home. As we move into the semifinals, you can see that Bravo did indeed take down the Dromai, and Florian managed to come up and over the top of Lexi and pick up the win. But unfortunately for the Florian player, they had to face one of the worst case scenarios in this format, and that is a wizard of any shape and sort, really. Florian does not enjoy wizards, and Blaze is usually just too much for the Earth Rune Blade to deal with, and that's exactly what's going to happen. On the other side of things, Bravo taking on one of the Briars, and it looks like didn't go well for the Briar, as Bravo has a lot of tools and a lot of disruption potential, because when we go to the finals, it is Bravo Flattering Showman versus Blaze Firemind, and I'm just going to say it, if I had to pick one of these seats, I am always taking the Blaze seat. That doesn't mean that Bravo can't win, but Blaze feels so much more comfortable into a deck that wants to play the game versus a deck that wants to try and fatigue you. And this Bravo Flattering Showman most likely doesn't have that fatigue angle versus Blaze. And, even if they do, it turns out that after all is said and done, Blaze Firemind ends up taking the event. This is a hero that is so near and dear to my heart. She is quite potent, quite capable in the right hands, and into a wide field, she has a field day. But into a more specific and more hate-filled field, she can basically just be pushed down and relegated to the A or maybe even the B tier if people are really hating them, and if there are a lot of very targeted heroes. So I'm curious to see how Blaze fares. I will be taking Blaze over to the Pro Tour. I will be playing Blaze in side events and then most likely playing Blaze on the Sunday showdown. So I'm going to take my own stab at it. It really does, though, depend on how that meta shapes, because there are moments and modes where a meta can just push her out completely. That being said, there are a lot of other great talking points. Bravo has really done a great job of showing up as a Briar counter, along with the other Guardians as well. But Bravo really has been the standout. So if you're looking to pick up and play a Guardian, I would recommend playing one that can be flexible and disruptive and aggressive, like Bravo Flattering Showman. It's really interesting to see Florian coming out of the woodwork again as one of those sort of answers to aggressive decks trying to play for fatigue in an OTK. And of course, Dromai being Dromai and Olympia charging up out of nowhere is also fun to see. So the meta continues to develop, and we are about to embark upon a new journey as we get closer and closer to Pro Tour this weekend. Pro Tour Las Vegas is going to really be that high watermark moment in this portion of the year, and we're going to find out where this meta really sits. Is Kasai going to be up there at the top? Are we going to see multiple copies in the top 8? Or are we going to see Acilio still being there at the top? Maybe it's going to be Syndra. Maybe Marionette is going to prove that they have what it takes to just be that top dog in this brand new meta. But if you're excited to find out alongside me, then make sure you hit the button and make the number go to the other number. As always, everybody, thanks for watching.